Okay, so today on the bench we have a Uniden Bearcat. This is a Trunk Tracker 3 BCT15X is the model. This was brought in by a friend. He's, I don't even want to say he's really in... There are a lot of law enforcement officers around. They don't know what gets with that, which is a great thing. But he's not, I don't guess you'd say he's in law. We'll just say he's in a government agency. I'll just leave it at that. But in any case, anyhow, he has a shitload of scanners. This is not one of his favorites, but he does use it. And he kind of likes it for what he uses it for, but it recently crapped out on him. And he asked if I could fix it. And I said, there's probably a 1 in 100 chance of repairing this. But, hey, what are you going to do? Give it a try. Big problem is there's no schematics. Uniden has just, they've clamped shut on technical information nowadays. So, yeah, short of buying their products, yeah, you might as well kiss it goodbye. You're not going to get any technical information out of them. So trying to get a schematic for something like this nowadays out of Uniden's, you hang it up, guys. It's not going to happen. One reason I recommend not buying products from Uniden. So if anybody from Uniden's listening, yes, you heard me right. Because you don't release technical information, alignment procedures, and schematics, I highly recommend people don't buy your products. That's a bunch of BS. But in any case, so even without a schematic, there are some things we can check. Now the problem was the keypad is completely non-functional. Or was. Because I wasn't going to do a video on this. Because I, honest to God's truth, did not think I could fix this thing. Just knowing that I don't have a schematic. I mean, like I say, there's some things I can check, but yeah, if it's anything electronic, especially if you start getting into the processors or a lot of that, yeah, without the schematic, you might as well hang it up. Along with shit being encased in epoxy. Yeah, it's just... They don't want this stuff to be fixed anymore. And it's cheap, honestly, as cheap as it is nowadays, it breaks, you throw it away, you buy a new one. And especially when it comes to scanners, as fast as scanner technology changes. But in any case, we wanted to give it a try. So, sure enough, I did confirm it. You power it up, the rotary controls and push button functions worked on those, but the keypad was completely dead. You'd push buttons, nothing happened, didn't change anything, no beep noise, no nothing. And you could also not do a factory default reset on this, or wipe the memory. Now it'll keep the factory programming, but any user-defined programs, frequencies, anything you installed into these, you reset these by holding the hold button. Yeah, you need to be a yoga master, but hold the hold button, the channel 9, and the 2 buttons, all 3 of those in, and you turn it on at the same time. Well, you couldn't do that. The keypad was non-functional. So, anyhow, I cracked into this. My first one of these working on one. And of course, as soon as I get the cover off, I go, aha, flat flex cable. There's the problem. I got lucky. Now, they're starting to become more of a problem in a lot of cheap electronics, and some people may not consider this cheap, but it is. Trust me, the build quality on this thing's not that great. And this goes to prove it. Matter of fact, this radio. So, now these connectors, if you can see, there's one down here on the main board, and then there's one up on the display and keypad board. You can see the main body's white, but the top of it's black. Okay, that's actually the lock tab. So, the way the flat flex cable sockets work is, you push the cable down in there, and then when you push that collar down, that actually is what basically pushes the pins in to latch on to that flat flex cable. So what you do to remove them is you pop up both sides of that little black piece there. You just, your fingernail or a screwdriver or something, but you pop them up and then the cable just slides out. So the first thing to always try anytime you see one of these when you're having problems with something that has them is just try reseating them. So pop the cables, pop the little lock collars loose, pull the cable out, reseat it. Maybe take a tissue and just wipe across it to make sure that the surface of it's not contacted. If the pins on these flat flex cable aren't gold plated, like these aren't, they're just tinned. And try sticking it back in, push the little lock collar back down, see if it works. I did that. Yeah, it was still completely, the keypad was completely non-functional. But I did notice, then I tried pushing on it because I noticed that these connectors, they're not through-hole connectors. The connectors are, as you can see, this is a surface mount radio, okay? Little teeny tiny parts down in here. So you can see how small they are, really small. For the average person, that's going to look like, wow, yeah, really small. Yeah, get used to it, guys. That's the way all electronics going. So if you plan on working on modern stuff, you're going to need an oscilloscope and some specialty soldering equipment, but that's just a fact of life. That's a whole nother topic. But the connectors are surface mount as well. I don't like that. For the simple reason, anything like that can take a lot of stress, even though it can't really move, but still, it's got cables here, just vibration, it weighs, you have weight to it. Shit like that can be a failure point, and in this radio, no difference. It's one thing I don't like about surface mount. Now, for small components like these, down here on the main board, it's not a problem. They're really small. The soldering on surface mount stuff like this has a high reliability. The problem is, once you step up on size, when you start getting up to stuff like this, especially if it has wires hanging off of it, that's a lot of stress on those little teeny tiny microscopic solder joints. And that's what happened in this one. The solder joints failed. What I found was if I pushed down here, the keypad would work. If I pushed it that direction, yeah, the keypad was non-functional. If I pried the connector body this way, it would work. So it was obviously a bad... Now there's traces on both sides of this flat flex connector down here. They stick out the sides. I don't know if you can see the little shiny pins there. That's actually the legs coming out off of that flat flex connector. And there's a row of them on each side. So getting to one side's fairly easy. Just remove 5 connectors, pull this one, this one, this one, and this one back here. It's also got the tape here, but pop that up. Then remove your flat flex cable, 2 screws on each side of the radio, and the entire faceplate just comes off. So now it's out of the way. Now there's an electrolytic capacitor here, and there's another one about dead center underneath this flat flex cable. You'll need to remove those because they're completely in the way of that connector. Now, once you get those off, the other side is extremely easy to get to because the faceplate of the radio is gone now. You're looking straight in at an angle at it, so that's really easy to get to. Now, as far as resoldering those, I guess you could do them point by point. I usually don't do that on multi-pin, just like when I'm installing, surface mount ICs. I do what's called drag soldering. I do the same thing when I'm reflowing. If there's a bad solder joint, I'll drag solder them. And what that procedure is you take, actually I have the tip here that I used. So I use a paste soldering iron, and they have a tip called they actually have a couple of them, but they come in different styles. And they're called the Mini Wave. Now you can see it's just a bent tip with a little angle there, which I like this bent tip because it makes it very ergonomic to hold the soldering iron with the tip flat across the board like that. But the tip's not perfectly flat on this bottom edge here. It's actually concave. It's actually cut out a little bit. It's like a cup or a divot in the end of that tip. The idea being is you load that with solder. It allows you to add a meniscus of solder to this, so there's it has kind of like a storage capacity. So you load the tip till you get a little bit of a bubble on it. Be very liberal with your flux, so clean the heck out of it. Clean that off, and then apply lots of liquid flux. And then I just take the tip and drag it across all those pins. Now I had to use a big tip like this. I really, let's go over here and grab one. I really couldn't use a small tip like this. The problem with that connector is it also connects to the ground plane in several places. And trying to use a small tip like this, it just doesn't have the thermal reserve. It has a really hard time soldering when it's attached to the huge ground plane surface on the board. Where a tip like this, being a little bit chunkier, has a little bit more heat stored in it, and it's more efficient on soldering stuff like that. Now, like I say, the other side wasn't a problem. That's kind of out in the open. So I reflowed that one, which apparently that side wasn't a problem. But if I'm going to reflow one side, I want to reflow the other side as well. But yeah, this one down here was a little bit tricky to get to because you can see with this RF shield in the way, you've got the connector here. Now the bottom, this kind of like white plastic portion of it, that's fairly high heat resistant. but the black part's not. So you got to be careful when you get down in there, because you got to hold your tip back at an angle, but still try to maintain good flat contact with the pins. But you also got to watch the shield here, and then drag the iron across. But I was able to successfully reflow all those solder pins, or all those connections, put the radio back together, and like I said, I was, never know. But when I saw it was that, I was like, well, there's a chance. I resoldered it, plugged it in, and what can I say? Holy shit, it works. So, let me reinstall the cover and the speaker, slide it back in the case, and we'll turn it on, and I'll show that it actually works now. Like I say, I was kind of surprised, because usually, honestly, a lot of this modern electronics, it's disposable electronics. That's unfortunately what they're making nowadays. It's so cheaply made, and it's cheaply priced. I mean, now you might consider this an expensive scanner, but in the grand scheme of things, if you look at how much a Bearcat or a Uniden scanner cost back in the 70s, yeah, this thing is cheap compared to what stuff cost back then in the money of that time. The price has just plummeted thanks to cheap Chinese manufacturing. But so anyhow, let me get this put back together, and I'll hook it up and show it actually does work and the keypad works. So hey, successful repair. I really wasn't expecting it. I thought this was just going to be a recycle radio for the recycle pile, but it's actually working. So I'll be right back in a second. Okay, so you can see the scanners back together now and scanning. Now I've just programmed in a couple frequencies. Honestly, this kind of scanner in this area is useless. Pretty much everything, I'm literally right on the PA Maryland state line. But yeah, everything around me, especially in Pennsylvania, their Project 25 Phase 2, which this scanner won't do, and like state police in this state they're on the, Pennsylvania has a special name for it, something like StarNet or something, but it's part of the Open Sky system. It's a kind of unique trunk system, and there are no scanners. Not just this scanner, there are no scanners anywhere that will work with that system. Proprietary code, I don't know, it's a bunch of hoo-ha, but yeah. Yeah, it's another problem with scanners, is the hobby's dying because they're making it to the point where you just can't listen to it anymore. The early trunk systems, they'd come out with the new trunk systems, the scanner manufacturers could, upgrade to it. You might have to buy a new scanner, but it would work. But yeah, nowadays, the other problem is, in this state, my understanding is they're talking about, even though they've gone to that, basically kind of like the federal government Open Sky system, like I say, they've got a special name for it in PA. I think it's StarNet or Skynet or something like that. But they're talking about going to an encrypted system. So some states have started to do that as well. It's encrypted. So even if you have a scanner that can work on that trunking network, it's still going to do you absolutely no good, because it's now an encrypted system on top of that, which I think is a bunch of BS. Personally, my opinion is all government agencies, be it your local, if you have a municipally run trash company, but everything from trash, sewer, and septic to towns, state, county, state, and federal government, as long as it's not a security issue, like national security, whatnot, I'm sorry, their radio systems, so you can see I've programmed in some trunking frequencies, which won't work on this radio, but you can still listen to them. You just have to, lock out the data channels like that. But anyhow, like I say, they work for us, and we used to be able to monitor them, so there's no way really of the general public to monitor once they go to these trunking systems that no one, because it's a proprietary system, that the scanner manufacturers, which there really are only two anymore, Uniden and Whistler. Now, I used to be a Uniden fan for decades. That's what I grew up with as a kid. Seeing around me was Uniden scanners, but personally, I don't personally use Unidens anymore. Everything that I have is Whistler. I really like the whistlers. They're just a lot easier to use. And this thing, oh my God, this is a perfect example. Jesus, if you don't hook this thing up to a computer, yeah, if you got this on the first of the year, you might be lucky if you had it programmed by the end of the year, because this is about the most complicated piece of junk to program that I've ever seen. Holy shit. The layers of menus and groups you have to go through to program something in is just mind-bogglingly how hard they made this. Now, once you've got it figured out, luckily I'm used to scanners and trunking scanners, so I stand a chance. But man, if somebody that had never used one of these bought this as their first scanner, I doubt it would ever work for them. They'd have never been able to program it. Short of having a friend do it for them. But yeah, like I say, the scanner hobby is kind of going away because the government agencies are getting very secretive. They're going with the proprietary trunking systems, and then on top of that, they're going encrypted. So yeah. But luckily around here you can still follow a little bit of not all the local government agencies and some of the fire departments and whatnot you can still listen to. But yeah, other than that, yeah. Now he had mainly, I think, analog frequencies set up in this, and he also had some military air and civilian aircraft frequencies programmed into it. But now I've done a factory reset on this. Now he had said, don't worry if you end up clearing a memory. Nope, you can hear a call coming in. It's my local Adams County Fire Dispatch.
Fox 25-1, Tyrone Township, 760 Company Farm Road, between Fraser Road and Rock Valley Road. Difficulty reading, class 1 response. That's Company 25, that's Company 9, Mickey 54-1.
Yeah, you can see I had the PL tone programmed in for that. But so you can hear it actually does receive. But yeah, so I mean, it does work. Like I say, so if you own one of these and you feel safe working on surface mount components, the thing I would say, if your keypad ever completely dies on it, check the flat flex cable. Just slide the rear cover off. There's 4 screws in the back. This outer housing slides off. Remove the there's a RF shield is completely encased again. It does have, that's one thing I'll give it. It has really good RF shielding. It's a cover on a cover. But then remove that inner shield that has the speaker in it, and you'll gain access to the part that I showed you. Just try removing that flat flex cable and reinstalling it. That might fix it. Now, like I say, in the case of this radio, it was actually a bad solder joint at that flat flex connector on the main PCB. But if you feel confident doing surface mount work, it's have at it. That might be the problem. So there you go. There's a Uniden Bearcat BCT15X back up and running now.